Hey everybody, I'm Russo, and I do a little work here and there. It looks like we're back in the Ready War, and this time, as promised and definitely overdue, we're going to talk about cards. And in particular, this card, which is a prototype, highly customizable, and yes, dare I say, modular? And yes, coincidentally, I do dare. See, I had a few different ideas about what I was going to do here, and honestly, this wasn't even one of them. But the idea struck me, and I just had to see it to completion. Before we get too nitty-gritty with the details, we'll look at exactly what we have here. First, dimensions. This card is just larger than a standard playing card, and by standard playing card, I do of course mean Magic the Gathering card. Most of what sticks out are these rails on the sides, and those rails are actually the ends of carriages, which pull out to reveal smaller pieces which can be removed and customized as you see fit. On this particular model, you will notice that the left and right sections are the same, and that the top and bottom sections are the same. Of course, as I said, this is modular, so this configuration isn't a necessity. As you can see, the top and bottom can be removed, and then the left and right hand sides to reveal what is the core of this card system. Suppose you could call it that. I won't just yet, but I could. Regardless, the connections here function via the use of a sort of mortise and tenon and dado. I mean, it's a whole thing. You can see it there. I mean, it's sort of, here, I'll get a visual aid. This is my Sega Genesis collection, and if you think about the connection that these chips would make with the console, that's sort of what we have going, except maybe a Super Nintendo game would be a more apt comparison, especially this one, Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars, which has 3 chips in the bottom. Of course, our configuration is a little bit different because we have a skinny one in the middle and 2 wider ones on the sides. But moving on. This process for me starts on graph paper, where generally I try to rough in a basic design before moving on to a more detailed sort of sketch. Here, for instance, you can see the 3 different pieces that make up that core, and all of these designs will get transferred to the computer, where I will play around in Illustrator and really just get a better handle on what it is exactly I can do. Those designs eventually get exported as DXF files, and from there I let the silhouette take care of it, but most of these things I don't think it would be too bad. There's not that many pieces here. The top and bottom, for instance, both fit on one page. It's pretty good, since you can only get one of those sides out of each piece. Though you can get 3 of the center pieces, which is good because those are the ones you're probably more likely to mess up when you're cutting them. But yeah, that's the whole design process. Really, when you start looking at these pieces, you start to realize that there's really only one way that they can be built. And if you try to build it some other way, generally, you're apt to find out about it very quickly. So, for instance, I have these 2 side pieces, and they look about the same, but the insides are a little different. I illustrated the other carriage coming out, so if I pull out this one, I think you'll see what the problem is. And yeah, there are no rails on the top or bottom. Also, the spacers are built into the little pieces that come out here, so that in itself made making the pieces a little more difficult. But yeah, old design, new design, and these sort of iterations go pretty quick. Usually you only have to make 1 or 1.5 revisions before you get it to a much better state. So yeah, I mean, that pretty much is what it is, and I think it will do pretty well, even with just these attachments. I mean, that's at least 18 numbers there in the middle, with room to label next to the holes, and then 6 wider boxes. I mean, it's definitely more information than most games would need. And hey, I made it with mine in mind, so who cares what anyone else is playing? But I do still have to think where I'm going to take this from here, which isn't to say that I'm not still going to make the other cards that I had mentioned before, because hey, those are still good ideas. But hey, this is another good idea that definitely could use a little expanding. But yeah, I already have a few ideas for where I can take this. First, if you take the whole thing apart and put the 9 stat pieces on the top and the bottom, you can see how you could make a much wider card. Of course, there are still going to be holes on the top and the bottom, which seems like an interesting opportunity to me to maybe include some kind of stand or a frame sort of element. Who knows? But this also raises another interesting point, which is that certain pieces will only work with certain other pieces in certain configurations. So a second example, I suppose, would be to take the top and bottom and put them on the sides of the core. So you end up with something like this, which, I don't know, is kind of neat. Seems like you could work out some better functionality than what amounts to text boxes, but, you know, that's something. Or you could put a stat block on one side of that. And, yeah, looks kind of neat though. So I may need to think of an excuse to do things that way. Regardless, there are a lot of little bits that could go on this way, and if I wasn't too worried about the card getting a little bit thicker, right now it's about 1/8 of an inch or so, then yeah, I could put all sorts of neat stuff in here. But the plan is first to do some, I don't know, mechanical things, but it might be a little while. And a lot of the ideas that I have for stuff like that would probably involve enough space inside of this card form factor that I should just design an entire card for that express purpose. We can, we can get into that at some other point. Maybe do some research, that's what we do here. And hey, maybe if we're lucky, we can make something that's even cooler than this. Who knows? I think we're going in the right direction. And speaking of directions, at the time of this recording, we are but 3 subscribers from 500, which is kind of a neat thing. So I suppose we will go ahead and commemorate this to that. Why not? And we'll probably hit 500 by the time the next video is out. And I'm thinking more papercraft articulation. Might as well get something other than cards in this month. So, until next time, you've been watching The Ready Ward on Russo Works, and I'm Rousseau, out.